Gran Canaria is really rather pretty, but this was no time for a holiday, which is good because I forgot my swim shorts. I was there to drive the Hyundai i30 Fastback N on the road and at the rather technical Circuito de Maspalomas. Man, I'm bad at Spanish.
So here we are back again in a sporty Hyundai. This time it's the coupe version of the i30 N, the i30 Fastback N. I want to call it the i30 N Fastback. But anyway, it is what it is, and what it is very, very good. This car, I would say, is better than the hatch. Maybe not to look at, maybe not the rear end of this car, but in terms of the way it drives, it's been fine-tuned to something that's even more fun. And I didn't think that was possible.
Design-wise, the i30 Fastback N is a little longer, lower, and sits 21mm closer to the road. Plus you get that swoopy profile that slopes towards the rear, adding a touch of elegance, but without creating a couple of issues, as you'll find out later. In being less boxy than the hatchback, this C-segment saloon / coupe, whatever you want to call it, is actually more aerodynamic. It's also 12 kilograms heavier at the rear, but the curb weights are said to be the same.
So the first thing to note is that the UK does not get the standard model. We only get the i30 Fastback N Performance. That means the same 271 brake horsepower, 2-litre T-GDi engine, turbocharged, rather nice unit it is.
Rather nice because it generates 271 brake horsepower and 278 foot-pounds of torque when the overboost feature kicks in at maximum revs. That's enough for 0 to 62 miles an hour in 6.1 seconds and a top speed of 155 miles per hour. With almost all torque available from 1500 RPM, the i30 Fastback N is obviously a fast car. Not quite Honda Civic Type R and BMW M140i fast, although on public roads the difference is palatable, and the Hyundai is of course cheaper. In theory.
Now in many ways this car is identical to the i30 N hatchback. However, what Hyundai has done has changed the suspension, and a lot of these tweaks are very subtle. So we've gone from 1.7 degrees of camber to 1.5.
Hyundai has also thinned the anti-roll bars, softened the bushings and made the bump stops bigger and longer.
So basically you've ended up with a slightly more forgiving suspension system, one that is still going to bottom out if you really rag this to the track, but it should do it much less at the time, certainly in a road setting. Now those tweaks and a few others, including making the car 6.8% more stiff than the hatchback, means this thing is just more forgiving, it's more playful, it feels just a little more exciting to drive. And I didn't think that was possible because the i30 N hatchback was phenomenal, but driving this on road, on track, it's just so intuitive, it's so alive, it moves around in a way that is fun and a little scary, but at the same time it's not unmanageable, it's old school hot hatchback fun.
But it's certainly not old school in terms of what's going on at the wheels, with the electronic limited slip differential and torque vectoring both helping maintain grip and keep the front end tucked in when cornering.
Oh jeez. And of course you can hear there, I'm not heel towing because, to be honest, these days it's a bit of a rarity, but it's got rev matching and that makes it very good at fast driving. It keeps the car nicely weighted when you want it to be. As before, the suspension is a mixed bag. It's definitely more comfortable when you're in normal mode. Eco mode, it's pretty reserved. It's actually quite soft. It feels like a everyday hatchback, but put it in sport, things firm up. Put it in N and you're probably going to need spinal surgery. It's definitely still for track use. You can use it, and I did use it on the roads here, but ultimately it's very jittery. You can really feel everything, and that's great when you're racing and you want to know what the front wheels are doing and the back wheels, but not so good when you're having to deal with potholes, of which there are many in Britain, as we all know.
We also know that motorists care about fuel economy, in the UK anyway, and to be fair, the 34 mile per gallon claimed figure isn't too shabby. But then I saw an average of 11 miles per gallon after fast driving, so it's never going to be that cheap to run. Nor will it be that cheap to tax thanks to CO2 emissions of 188 grams per kilometre. That means you'll be spending £830 in the first year. Enough for a holiday to the Gran Canaria.
Now, Hyundai was one of the first to realise that actually people like to customise their car and get exactly the experience they want. So with this, you've got a really simple menu system and you can basically have everything at maximum attack but have the suspension soft, and that's all doable within the N custom mode. And it's just really, really handy. It allows you to sort of tone down the exhaust if, for instance, you don't want to wake up your neighbours, or you want everything soft except the exhaust and you want that as loud as possible. All these little things, permutations are possible. You don't need to mess with them. I think sport mode is really, really good. I think N mode has its place occasionally, but it's nice to know that you can mix it up a bit. Another highlight is how the pedals feel, how the gear stick feels. It's all very precise. Not quite Honda precise, not as mechanical as, say, the BMW M140i, but it's very easy to change fast. At the racetrack yesterday, obviously the steering wheel is on the wrong side, and yet I was able to shift down very, very quickly without really having to think about it too much. Didn't fumble any of the gears, which is quite surprising because although the right hand for me is my strong hand, it's odd. You spend 13 years driving using this hand for gears, that when you swap, it's just not quite the same. But even then, I was still able to one-handed drive like a complete bell end. Still did a counter steer, have the gear where it needs to be, with the rev matching ensuring the car doesn't jolt, so the revs are there ready for that downshift, so your car is balanced as it goes into a corner. All of these little things that are really, really useful for making sure you have a good time in a car, but also making sure it's actually bloody quick. Despite the fact that this has a horsepower deficit on, say, the Honda Civic Type R, which is the best hatchback. Not the best to look at, that's for sure, but the best to drive. But in terms of on a track, in a race setting, this car probably wouldn't be too far off at all, and that is phenomenal. This thing is genuinely so easy to drive, and it's so inspiring, and it builds your confidence. Not dangerously so, because you know what the car's doing, but enough to make you feel like you're in a rally car and you're a rally driver.
Quite honestly, the Hyundai i30 Fastback N is one of the most exciting and accomplished performance cars you can get for under 30,000. Yes, it's not as ballistic as the M240i, the M140i, nor as alive as the Type R, but in some ways I think it's actually better at making you feel like the world's best driver, instead of the rubbish one you might actually be.
Another thing I like, and to be fair it's probably a cost-cutting measure, but actually manual handbrake. Now I know the electric one is meant to be more reliable, blah blah blah, but actually if you want a bit of a cheeky gravel, you can, which is cool. It's a hatchback. I know that's not very useful, and this is the coupe, so it should be more sophisticated, but actually it's still a little riot. It's a sub 30k performance monster, really, and so I like that. I guess if I had to pick some faults with this car, one of them is that it's quite easy to stall. I like to rev a car as low as possible because, mechanical empathy and all that, but I have managed to stall this car probably 2 or 3 times in 2 days, whereas my own car I haven't stalled in about 7 years, so take from that what you will. Also, I kind of wish the interior was a little bit more lavish. Just, you've got red stitching and that's cool, and you've got decent quality, it feels nice. Sorry, that's the marshals. It's a private road, but we have to be somewhat sensible. The quality is good, it feels sturdy, it feels like you could have a dog in here, or put your feet on the dash and you could just wipe it clear easily. You wouldn't mind too much, but at the same time, it's not cool enough and pretty enough for you to be like, yeah, this is amazing, which I think is a shame.
In fairness, what the i30 Fastback N lacks in luxury styling is countered by various mod cons such as wireless phone charging, an 8-inch touchscreen display, useful safety systems including forward collision assist and smartphone connectivity in the form of Android Auto and Apple CarPlay.
This after all is only £500 more than the hatchback, so they're so close that it's really whether you like the look of one or the other. I think dynamically this is better, but if you prefer a hatch, unless you're driving back to back, or you've really had some time with one of the cars or the other, you won't know. You'll still find it fun, hugely fun. Another negative is the fact that this car isn't a hatchback. And what I mean by that is interior space. So because this is the performance model, you've lost 14 litres of boot space. Not a lot, but you've got a torsional stiffness bar in the back to just make the car dynamically better. And that's fine, 14 litres isn't a lot. It's a couple of boxes of shredded wheat less or something. However, you've also got the sloping roof, which can be a little bit of a pain because if you're relatively tall, sort of 6 foot plus, then the fact that it curves is going to hit you here. But in terms of legroom, it's pretty good. I mean, we're not talking about a big car. It's C segment, but it's large enough to accommodate 4 adults without being awful. The boot actually is far bigger than probably the closest competitor, which is the Mazda 3 Fastback. But then that thing is nowhere near as powerful. This car is in a unique space. It's an affordable 5-door hot hatch C segment weapon. In some ways that helps Hyundai, not only because it's got less competition, but this is the only thing you can have. So you have to put up with the Hyundai badge. And that brings me on to another potential negative. You have to tell your friends it's a Hyundai. And I know that sounds awful because you get a nice warranty. 5 years, it actually covers you at track. Not if you stick the car into a wall or anything stupid like that, but
Hyundai did assure me the warranty terms and conditions are the same for track driving as they are for the road.
as cool as this is, and bearing in mind that Albert Bierman, the ex-BMW M Division guy, has worked really hard on these cars, and the Kia Stinger, don't forget that. But still, it's a Hyundai, isn't it? For me though, I like the fact that this is an underdog. It's come out of nowhere, and Hyundai has created a car that is way more exciting than the Golf. Almost as exciting as the Type R. Almost as exciting as the M140i. In some ways, it probably actually is better than that car, because although that's rear-wheel drive, it's more easy to go wrong in that car and be facing backwards and crash. With front-wheel drive, it's a little bit more forgiving, but the wheels are really alive. There's so much acceleration. You've got the wheels spin. You can feel the car trying to stop the wheels from spinning up, and it's all very beefy, mechanical. It's a really meaty feeling that you can just get behind, just enjoy. Really then, the only thing that's stopping you from going for this car is that Hyundai badge, but it doesn't bother me at all, really. If anything, it shows a bit of strength of character. You're not following the herd, but it depends on you. It's very subjective. Maybe you don't like the looks. Maybe you just really can't get past the fact that you're in a South Korean car. I don't know. Whatever that is, that's up to you. But for me, it's a car that you'll drive and you will probably forgive that badge very easily. I put the car in N mode now because I want to drive a little faster than normal, and hopefully you can hear the exhaust. I'm not meant to, but shh, don't tell the marshals. Alright. Honestly, it's just so pointed. You spend most of your time just enjoying it, struggling at all the power it's putting to those front wheels. These corners are very tight. But the ability for it to tuck the car in using its electronic limited slip differential is phenomenal. And you got the rev matching, so the car is just ready to be chucked into the corner. And then when it does,
It's so fun, in fact, that apparently I couldn't finish my sentence. Anyway, the TLDR, or should that be TLDL, is that there's very little wrong with the i30 Fastback N. Sure, the back end could be a little prettier, it will make you lose your driving license in about 10 minutes, and every time you tell people you own a Hyundai, they will automatically assume you've given up on life, or you're about to move on from it. None of those things are particularly appealing.
one other fault I would pick with this car, and it's something that I was speaking to Steve Sutcliffe about, a bit of a motoring heavyweight if you're a petrol head, and he said they could have made this car a lot more special, because it's only the second time they've done an N performance car. So obviously they got their rally division, and that thing is really cool, but they could have gone mad. Now I do agree, but it's nice this car is sub 30k, and you can have a coupe with all of the goodness in the N hatchback. So the fact it's a affordable performance coupe really opens it up to a lot more customers, and that's a good thing.
But there is one negative I've saved right until last, because for some of you who crave performance, it could be a biggie.
When we were doing the presentation for this car, they gave us a little teaser of something else, and to me, it looked like a coupe. Not sure entirely, it wasn't easy to see exactly what was there, but what Hyundai has said is that it is going to be the most powerful car, the most serious N car it has ever done. And based on how good this thing is, even if it's sub 40k, 300 plus horsepower, it's going to be an absolute riot. So if anything, if you really like this car and you like what it's all about, but you've got more than 30k, maybe it's worth waiting.